the coding class for lawyers versus the kids who took the non-coding class were actually deeper thinkers, more analytical. They were thinking through these law situations differently. And it was an interesting take because we fully believe, Sean and I, that by implementing coding, not necessarily coding for developers, but just that coding, the concept of learning how to code and changing your brain patterns and the way you think about problems is really like a beneficial take to other subject areas.
Hello and welcome to the Pybites podcast, where we talk about Python, career, and mindset. We're your hosts. I'm Julian Sequeira.
And I am Bob Beldebos. If you're looking to improve your Python, your career, and learn the mindset for success, this is the podcast for you. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Bob Beldebos, and I'm here with Kelly Schuster-Paredes. Say it the
Hi,
Spanish
Bob.
way. How you
Yeah,
doing?
Spanish way is great. Great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I cannot believe we have not spoken on this podcast since episode 009, which, wow, why didn't we do this earlier?
I don't know, but I like to believe that that's because, we're kind of like your first and your bestest friends. So we've been
Recently,
long time.
we got to meet again, Pycon US, and it was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, so you do a lot with Python. You teach, you host Teaching Python. For the people that don't know you yet or need a refresher, can you do a quick intro?
Yeah. So Kelly Schuster-Paredes, I'm a sixth grade, eighth grade computer science teacher. Teaching Python to 10-year-olds is always fun. Started learning Python when I was told that I had to teach Python. And that was scary. And that's kind of how we met you, because we were doing the code challenges. I think Sean put me on a couple to try to beef up my Python knowledge. And then Julian's Newbie Bites were great. And I was doing those, trying to refresh and have a different way of teaching kids. And yeah, that's me. New
Awesome.
Pythonista for, I think now 6 years, 7 years. I've
6
been coding.
years.
6 years, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
we followed that journey closely, right? Because I think you started around 2018 and we met up at the PyCon then at
2019.
Cleveland, and you
Yeah.
were just getting started, and since then a lot has happened. So yeah, and you host Teaching Python. Maybe you want
Yeah.
to quickly share what
Yeah.
that
So the
podcast is
teaching,
about.
absolutely. So Teaching Python podcast, Sean Tiber and I, we started it shortly before we went to PyCon in 2019 in December, I think 2018, we started it. And it was because we started having really great conversations. Sean is a really amazing coder. He picked up Python in, I think, like 2 weeks. Just like he's picking up Terraform with no problem. But he was a new teacher, and I am an experienced teacher, been around teaching for about 26 years. So we mentored each other, and we were having these really great conversations, me as a newbie coder and him as a newbie teacher. We started to cross our intelligences, how you, I guess, sum it up. And we mentored each other. And it just, we started talking around the lake, and we said, you know what, we need to go in the classroom and record these. And that's how the Teaching Python podcast came about. So,
That's
yep.
awesome. We
Yeah.
spoke with Sean here as well in episode 93. And yeah, how many episodes have you done so far?
We just recorded 138. We're on a good schedule. We're recording live streaming on Mondays during the summertime, but when school starts and all the sports happen with our kids, he has two kids, I have two kids, and trying to match soccer and lacrosse and volleyball and basketball is a fun time. So yeah, 138 though.
Nice, congratulations. Yeah, it's
Thank you.
hard to fit it in, but also to stay consistent, right? Because you always have to come up with new things and
Yeah, I
good
think
stuff.
the new things are easy. The more I'm digging in, the more I'm seeing different takes on how Python is taught. So we're always trying to stay current on that. It's just trying to find the time to squeeze that in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like as long as you're coding and building stuff, then it's relatively easy. Well, and you're teaching it, right? So you constantly see what the students are doing and the questions they're asking. I think that must be a very fertile ground, right, to get
Yeah.
topics from.
Yeah, and then like they're pushing the boundaries with AI, so new things come up all the time that I have to, Google or something or search on Chat GPT because the kids are like, "How does this work? And why is this happening?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. That's a great question." So it's always something popping up.
Yeah, by the way, for before I forget, good news for you and the students. We just expanded the newbie bites from 25 to 50. So
Oh, they're gonna
you can
be
give them.
so excited. But that's
There's an
good.
irony in there, but
No, the
they do
sixth
like them, right?
grader, well, the sixth graders, they start off, it's a little bit of a trick, right? So the first seven, they're like, these are easy. And I'm like, that's because I'm a good teacher, because I always teach them a couple, 2 weeks before. And then they hit number 8 with string methods, and they're like, "Ah," but and then it starts going and going, and as it gets increasingly harder as it should, and then they get a little stuck, and they do it though. After they're done, they're really excited. I'll have to tell them there's an extra 30 for them. We'll save those for the seventh graders.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, so before we go into the 4 or 5 questions I have, do you want to share a win of the week?
Yeah, so I shared this on our episode on Monday, but I think it's a good one and I'm still working on it. I always play around with projects that never really come to full fruition, but they're still fun just to like keep my coding brain going. And a couple like last year before, I started working in Flask because I had taken a data science course and I wanted to practice on what I had learned from data science, and I was making an app, a really bad app in Flask, coding it myself. And then recently someone was telling me about Django and how I should go to the Django conference. And I said, yeah, but I know nothing about Django. And so I took my app from Flask and I said to ChatGPT, I said, I want to convert this to Django, but you have to do everything in one step at a time, which is really important to tell ChatGPT because it'll spew out about 20 steps at a time. And so I'm building it, and it's really interesting because I didn't realize it came fully packaged with SQLite, and the whole foldering system was, I had to stop for a second. I was like, explain to me what's going on with this main project or my project and this other project and these two separate folders and the folder system. But it was cool. I have a somewhat working app. It's ugly. It's got a gray overlay over the over the writing, which I have to dig in and figure out what's going on in the HTML. But it's cool because I'm using this documentation that I put into ChatGPT to make sure that I'm pulling at least from the memory. Yeah, and it's just been a fun little project that I've been doing this week, and I'm gonna keep finishing it because it was really cool having a form, putting it into a database. I could access my database. Big learning curve, though. I
Yep.
know maybe about 0.09% of Django, I think.
Probably a bit more. Yeah, it's batteries included, right? So you
Yeah.
have your ORM, your templating, and migration system. So, but yeah, at the cost of a bit of a learning curve at the start. But what's really cool about AI tools is that you can make your own custom tutorials, right? So
Mhm.
instead of having to go through a lot of docs and you can give it context, right? So you gave your
Mhm.
Flask app and then you made a tutorial based on your app. So
Yeah.
I think because of that, it made more sense already. Plus,
Yeah.
you're
And then
building what you want to build, right?
exactly. And I had already had this document of what I wanted. So I had this whole list of, I want to have this form, I want to have all these things in it. And I think that's like a huge twist with AI, and some people who use AI, they just say something like, I want to build a Django app. Well, that's going to be a complete disaster. But I gave a lot of pre-information from my Flask app and then my list of objectives to cover. So it makes it, with a few twists and a few errors, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, and you made an important point as well about the step by step. Like it's
Yeah.
very greedy in bouncing the steps over and over again. So you have to really ask it like to go one step at a time, be
One step.
concise, and
Yep.
those kinds of hints will matter in otherwise
Yeah.
you're just lost in a sea of information, right?
Yeah. And did you notice? I'm sorry, I digress, but did you notice in settings with the memory of ChatGPT there you can go in there and say one step at a time, this is my memory, and I don't want you to give out 10 steps. It forgets, but if you go back and ask it a couple of times, it stores it in its memory. It was a really cool feature that they
Yeah,
just pushed
I've
out.
not used that yet. I should. It's kind of setting a profile, right? And a sort of context from the start.
Yeah, you can see everything that if you've had memory saved on with your settings, you can go in and delete what it's saved about you. Now it knows everything that I started learning Python in my 40s, so that's like it's a constant thing because I guess it's pulling from the internet as well. But yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So yeah, let's move on to a couple of questions then. So at PyCon, you did the education summit.
Yeah,
So I'm just curious what it is, how you guys approached it, and some of the takeaways, stories. Yeah, tell me more about that.
I love the Education Summit. If you've never been, which you need to come one time when you guys get there early, it's not held on the Thursday before the main conference of PyCon. And Sean and I co-host. That was our third year of co-hosting the Education Summit. We're going to do it again next year, and it's just a great time. We have so many people from unique backgrounds that come in. To the Education Summit. We had Nick Tollervey and Anaconda's team come in and talk about PyScript and how that can be incorporated. We had two lawyers from Duquesne University come in and share their experiences of introducing Python to non-coders in the law, the law profession. These kids that come in to be lawyers and they think they never have to code, they now are taking Python courses. I think they have like two or three, and they're going to implement an NLP course next year, which I think would be really cool. I told the lawyers, I'll test it out for you. We had another one come in about using the RAG and AI in order to dissect a book and use it as a tutorial. Just so many great robotics. We had Dr. Chuck Severance, who's the coding Python for everyone. Coursera teacher. So it was just great. And Education Summit is we have a couple of speaking times, we have birds of a feather, and a lot of interactions. So everyone gets to come in and just talk about teaching and Python, and it's a fun experience.
Cool. So basically, you get together with a lot of teachers of different backgrounds and interchange experiences and see how overall we can improve as teachers or the
Yep.
teaching of
Yeah.
Python, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just for K-12 or university. We had Reuven Lerner come in, so it's also adult teachers. It's just a fun time. We talk about pedagogy and methods of teaching Python and yeah, good times.
And the lawyers were there as well, then, right?
Oh, the lawyers were there and they came back the next day and they were they really liked it. They're going to come again, I think, next year. Just fun. Lots of fun.
And
So if you haven't checked it out, you have to come into the Ed Summit.
we will.
I was going to say everyone's a learner, everyone's a teacher when it comes to Python. We all have some form of educator in our personality and persona when we're doing Python because we're always sharing information. So
That's a good point. Like, even if you're label yourself as just a Python developer, you still have to be mindful of that, right? Because you probably are teaching other developers or junior developers, or you do teaching in your code reviews in a sense as well, right? So even if you don't see yourself as a teacher, it's probably a good skill to have or to be aware of that, right?
yeah, like Sean has interns, so he's still really actively teaching with the interns that come into his company. So everyone's a learner and a teacher.
Yep. No, I like the inspiration you got from there. I like the lawyers. NLP is big in that space. We had a client in PDM that was building these kinds of apps and automating his work, and it's wild.
It is wild. Lots of things we can do with it.
Yeah. So were there any a specific takeaway you want to highlight, or was it just mostly the inspiration and new ideas?
There was a lot of inspiration. We had Dora Palfi from I'm trying to think of her company. But she has these little gadgets and she's trying to get girls into coding more. She's about getting everybody in, which I think was the underlining theme. So if you have these lawyers talking about getting kids into coding and you have Dr. Chuck talking about everyone can be a coder regardless of your background. That whole theme of we truly believe that everyone can be a coder regardless of age, race, gender, whatever. And that's kind of like that underlying theme that came across this year, and it was really powerful. Yeah, it's just a great experience. Makes me smile every time I think about it.
In just 12 weeks, Pybites elevates you from Python coder to confident developer. Build real-world applications, enhance your portfolio, earn a professional certification showcasing tangible skills, and unlock career opportunities you might not even imagine right now. Apply now at pybit.es/PDM. I'm very happy to hear that. I think it also nicely ties into the next item we have on the list, the integration of Python in other subject areas at school, something you're passionate about. Do you want to tell me more about that?
Well, it's always been our thing. Sean and I, we always try to put Python into other courses, but it's often difficult because in the middle school situation, teachers want to get through their content. But I had an almost like an epiphany on Monday when we were talking to these lawyers, because they found out some of the other teachers in their tract, in their diploma track, were saying that the kids who took the coding class for lawyers versus the kids who took the non-coding class were actually deeper thinkers, more analytical. They were thinking through these law situations differently. And it was an interesting take because we fully believe, Sean and I, that by implementing coding, not necessarily coding for developers, but just that coding, the concept of learning how to code and changing your brain patterns and the way you think about problems, is really like a beneficial take to other subject areas. Everyone thinks, okay, yeah, science makes sense. We can do Python and science. It's very easy because graphing, data collection, research. That's great. Math, of course, we can put some math in there and do visualizations or computational tools. Just even thinking about for kids how to set up a math problem, even in the sixth grade, like how do we put parentheses and multiply it out to get the answer correct according to the equation on the paper. That's an obvious take. But when you start thinking about how can I take Python and put it into the humanities classes, or how can I put it into the English classes, talking about text analysis, linguistic research, creative writing, all these little things with, like you said, the NLP, it can really change their insights and get a better understanding of literature. I'm just thinking, if it could take two comparison of books to find sentiment or some sort of connection between the themes of the book or history patterns. What a powerful thing that you could do as a humanities teacher.
So, two things I'm hearing there, right? It can enrich any discipline, can make you a more powerful historian, biologist, whatever, right? But that's really interesting. Like, we often think like we want to learn coding Python to solve XYZ, and then we focus really on the coding. But it's actually expanding the mind and makes you better problem solver. So those are like more generic skills that are far beyond the initial goal of Python per se. And wasn't it you that you mentioned at least a couple of times that book, Mind for Numbers?
I
And
think, yeah,
is that something in this context even?
that's been a long time since I've read that. And I think I only skimmed that book, but yeah, but it's the idea. I just think, and I don't, you'll have to refresh my memory on the mindful for numbers, because I think I have it in my bookcase, but I don't know. But it's the idea that it's just, I don't know how to explain it really well, but in cognitive science, we have these certain paths between our short term and our long term memory. And normally, our paths go always on the same route, like not mine and yours, but mine in particular would go on this route and yours might go on a different route. And when we put in a different situation, completely new to our brain, something that's difficult, something that's challenging, our neurons have to kind of reset and make these connections. And Barbara Oakley always talks about how these new pathways can enhance our learning. Um, and really develop our brain patterns. And it's just a new concept.
In this context, we had another episode as well, 84 Lessons Learned from the Programmer's Brain, which is a book at Manning by Hermans, I think. And that's interesting in this context as well, like how programmer's brain work and these long-term, short-term memory and these pathways you're describing. So, but anyway, not to derail, but yeah, I think that's interesting. And yeah, is there anything specifically you're working on with that, or is it just a promotion of the endorsement of that, or is there specific initiatives you're leading there?
I would love to get back in the classroom and do some activities. Really would love to get into the math classroom right now, but our initiative pretty much is anything AI, just helping teachers get through how to use AI. But there's always option. I brought up using Python with the art teacher because we were talking about pixels and drawing and how we can do generative art and maybe use something that's hand drawn and try to replicate it with Python with a couple different things or look at pixel art. That's a project that I'm hoping to do in the new school year. Just getting art teachers. I think the kids realize that you can do a lot of cool art with code, but it's the teachers, it's the older generation that have a hard time seeing the connection. Work on that a little bit. I always want to go into English classes. I think the fact that now we have generative AI and that whole process of predictive text is something that Pythonistas kind of knew was always possible, but a lot of the educators don't really understand how it works. And I think that if you can get Python into the English classroom and really open the doors with some NLP, some simple predictive text or sentiment analysis, people will start to understand how AI and the transformer library came into play. So those are always my wish lists for the school years.
Yeah, and makes me realize that when we start like integrating Python into other subject areas, you are basically saying integrating Python plus AI, right? Because it's very likely that, you know, when you do that, that you get into AI both for the theme of the projects, but as well how we learn it, right? So do you, I mean, I know you use AI for your own learning, but do you also use it in your teaching? And how do you think the teachers overall, are they embracing it, or is there still skepticism because, you know, it can take part of the learning away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a mixed feeling. So, first of all, anyone under the age of 18 is not legally allowed to use ChatGPT without direct parental consent. That's something that OpenAI and everyone else kind of followed. So, there are a lot of AI companies that are trying to find ways to go around the loop, whether they've brought in a model locally. That's one way. So we do have one program that we use at school that allows our younger kids to use it. And that's super helpful. So that is a task I'm going with teachers. But the thing is they don't really understand AI. And for me, I think that's the biggest hurdle when the kids see Python and when they understand the conditions, and then when we talk about data science in the eighth grade, they start to realize when I'm explaining how AI works in the like the most general sense, they realize that, oh wow, you know, I can see now how Python was used to create um the chat GPT. That makes sense. And oh, I see where all this data came from. So I think my biggest goal for the teachers is just trying to get them over that hurdle is to see the process of the Python and the AI versus just using it. Because once they figure out the process, then the using becomes easier.
That's a good point. We probably take a lot of that for granted.
Yeah, and that becomes the problem, right? Because then they don't really understand how to prompt correctly. There's all these people that say, "Oh, you have to do this certain type of prompt." But no, you just really need to be able to think about the problem that you want to solve when you're prompting, and the more explicit you become with the content and the context, just like when you code, you need to understand your direction in code and the context of who you're coding for. And and once you do that, the problem becomes easier, right?
Yeah, I like prompt engineering. It's a whole discipline, right? There was that tweet the other day, like the new programming language is English.
Yeah,
Like it's not just type a bunch of stuff into ChatGPT. No, you actually have to formulate and articulate the problem to get a good result, right? So
e-
it's not that easy per se.
correct.
Cool. So what are you already shared, your Django learning? So maybe a wider question, what are some tech trends, except AI, I guess, you're you're passionate about?
What am I
Or you want to
passionate?
take on, you can still go on the learning path as well. I think they probably go hand in hand, right? So
As someone asked me that, like, what would something of to the fact of what would you do if you could do anything at all? And I was really lame was the fact that it's for me, it's always learning. Like, I don't have any hobbies besides looking at things online, and I don't really watch too much TV. I actually do not read as much as I used to because now I'm so inundated with a whole bunch of articles and research that's coming out there. And that's like really been a passion for me is looking into that. But yeah, I think just keeping up with the trends. I like the idea of really figuring out what's going on with the security and the ethics behind AI. That's been a big thing for me. I was just reading an article about cybersecurity and now how they're using AI, hackers and stuff are using AI to completely replicate sites and emails and send these amazing phishing emails and scamming emails where the email looks as if it's coming from Chase Bank and everything's trademarked and the logo's perfect and people are having to be really careful now about that. So this is like a heightened topic for me that I've been looking carefully at.
that's fascinating, and that will become super important. Like it's such a powerful tool, but as a knife, right? It can be a scalpel for good. To do surgery, it can be a murder weapon, right? So it can the hackers will catch up, of course, right? New tool. They will
Correct.
use it inside out. So it's pretty scary as well. So
Gotta
yeah.
height we gotta heighten our security and with our developers and really figure out be smarter than the hacker, right?
Yeah, it's I think cybersecurity is a big thing right now, and it will evolve and it will become even more important. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Um, yeah, no, I like the I like the learning addiction. I have that too, right? Like, doesn't even matter at some point what to build. You just want to learn and share, and
Hmm.
comes with a price though. You're laughing at Pycon that we don't always get Julian's nerd references, but it's I happily pay that price. We leave this in. Um, as well as the mindset question. What do you think of mindset? How important is it for a developer, programmer? How often are you faced with mindset challenges
I
to
think,
be successful in this
yeah,
field?
well, in any field, right? The mindset matters. I was watching a TED talk about grit. I hate the word grit, but it sums it up, I guess, perfectly as a mindset. The people who were most successful, the cadets in the military, developers, entrepreneurs, they all have this mindset of I can always do better. I can always achieve more. And I think that happens a lot with coding. And that is always my journey with kids. The kids come in with this mindset of coding's hard. I'm not good at math, so I'm going to be horrible at coding, or my parents aren't good at technology, so I am not going to be good at technology. So for me, mindset is always trying to change that growth potential. I tell my own kids, perfection doesn't exist. Unfortunately, you can't be perfect because if we were perfect, we would live in a perfect world and everything would be there would be no failures. You wouldn't fall off your bike. You wouldn't miss that shot in the basketball. So mindset is just about achieving greatness and never really getting there, but just always climbing.
Nice. Yeah, I like how this always comes back to the fixed versus growth mindset, right? Like
Hmm.
I described some students coming in like, yeah, my parents were never technical, or "Dude, this is hard." I kind of think it's like fixed, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the growth, you believe that it can be there, but yeah, obviously you have to put in the work, but also coding is hard. It's a bumpy road, right? Like one
Yeah.
day you might be raving and it all works, and the next day you might get stuck on the what seems to be like the most simple thing, and you will feel really dumb, and that doesn't really go away. Like at all levels, you will have those moments, and then yeah, that requires mindset to then see it in perspective. Like you're not dumb. No, programming is pretty darn hard, right?
Mhm. You have to acknowledge that first, I think, for anyone. I always tell the kids, especially when they're helping somebody else, let them ride their own bike. You're not riding their bicycle for them, so stop touching their keyboard. Yes, it's hard. Yes, they're gonna fall. And yes, they may still have their training wheels on, but let them ride their own bicycle until they can ride it on their own. And that's huge. If you remind the kids about how it was to ride a bicycle and how it was hard and you didn't think you're ever going to do it and it was scary and there was always some sort of crutch until you got it, and then you got it and you're like, woohoo, free. That to me is coding or
Yeah,
learning
no,
anything new.
that's a great analogy. Or when you learn to drive a car, you
Hmm.
felt so stupid and incapable, and now it becomes automatic.
Exactly.
You still have to, of course, concentrate, but yeah, but when you were learning it was like it seemed impossible, right? So
Or when you're
anyway,
learning to drive on the other side of the road and when
yeah, when you go to Julian's continent, uh, he can drive.
Yeah.
Anyway, to wrap up, do you have a book tip or a resource you want to share?
So I was just given a book to read by a new author. It's called Artificial Artifacts. It's not out yet. I'm going to pitch it for him. The author is Fennec, Fennec. I'm not sure when it's releasing, but it's an interesting book. It's sort of like a fictional it is fictional. It's based, I think, in 2037, 2050. And it's just a neat take on the possibilities of where we can go with AI. So that's what I'm reading right now, just to give some not tips, but feedback on the book. Hopefully that comes out this year. But I think a lot of people will like it, especially in the coding world, because it's one of those when you start reading, you're like, I knew it, kind of things. So it's a good book.
That sounds amazing. Cool.
Yeah.
We'll link that in the show notes. I don't have a specific book. I'm just reading all over the place. And as I said in the last episode, definitely some Rust and Python. So doing a bit more technical reading because I want to blog more. Okay, so any final shout out or parting words?
No, I mean we have a couple of great people coming on our show in the next couple of weeks. We have Pamela Fox from Microsoft. We have Dr. Chuck, Python for Everyone from the Coursera course. And then, oh, we have Brianna Kaplan from Code Your Dreams coming back on our show. So we have a good lineup this summer. It's been a lot of fun. So if you haven't checked us out, those are some episodes to definitely check out because it's a new take on just how do we get Python for everyone. So I'm
Awesome.
excited.
Yeah, so it's probably teachingpython.com or just search Teaching Python in the podcast feed and you can subscribe, right? Or
Yeah,
also YouTube, I guess, right?
yeah, YouTube, we're everywhere. LinkedIn, teachingpython.fm. So
Yeah.
yeah, LinkedIn is becoming a passion for me. So
Oh yeah, we spoke about that. How's that going? You're posting there regularly?
oh yeah, I'm almost as many listeners as you. So if you're listening, you should just click and follow me so I can beat Bob and Julian and have more listeners. They're on my analytics and I'm like, go teaching Python, go.
Awesome. Very professional. So you're not only posting, you're even watching the stats and all that.
Oh, 100%.
I applaud that.
100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it was so nice to meet you again here. And thanks for yeah, sharing all these cool things. I'm sure our audience will find it inspiring, and we'll link all these resources below. And yeah, hope to catch up soon again.
Yeah, it's always fun talking to you, Bob. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Cheers. Have a good day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. To hear more from us, go to Pybites/friends. That is pybit.es/friends, and receive a free gift just for being a friend of the show.
And to join our thriving community of Python programmers, go to Pybites/community. That's pybit.es/community. We hope to see you there and catch you in the next episode.